Now, the right time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio.
And ESPNradio.com.
I need you to imagine for a second. Just close, well, I mean, I would say close your eyes, but a lot of you operate motor vehicles as you consume this here product. But I would like you to close your eyes if it would be safe. And imagine a world where Roger Goodell doesn't make $30-some-odd million. Right now, that's an important prerequisite for the discussion we're going to have. Like, I need you to imagine that Roger Goodell doesn't make $30-something million because I find you guys find it difficult to appreciate the struggles of rich people. And by you guys, I mean me too, right? You make trade-offs when you make a whole lot of money, and the trade-off generally is a bunch of stress. Like, how many ways can you think of that there are to make a whole lot of money that do not come with a great deal of stress? There simply aren't very many. And you know why? Because if somebody's paying you a great deal of money, they feel entitled to stress you. And you know why they do? Because they stressing over that money. Broke people stress over a little bit of money. Rich people stress over a lot of bit of money. But everybody stresses over money. So, Roger Goodell makes all that money. Anyway, I want you to appreciate the impossibility of the situation that your man Raj has gotten himself into. That's why I needed you to act like he didn't make $30 million. I want you to try your best to empathize with where he stands right now and how it is a no-win situation. So basically, what has happened is Roger Goodell gave a 4-game suspension to Tom Brady behind the whole deflated football things. I try not to say Deflategate because I think that sounds whack. However, the whole deflated football thing is a bit cumbersome, right? But anyway, footballs were deflated. Tom Brady got suspended 4 games. 4 games. Tom Brady got suspended. Now, Tom Brady says that he's going to go like the last Mr. Big, get you 12, we'll take this thing to trial. He's down to take this thing to court because he's going for full exoneration. And you know why Tom Brady's going for full exoneration? Because if he goes to court, he's going to win. That seems to happen with all of these NFL suspensions. Somebody with some good sense who doesn't necessarily have a vested interest in football takes a look at what's going on and is like, yo, this is crazy. Like even Paul Tagliabue, he used to have Rodgers' job. Paul Tagliabue looks at a Goodell decision and is like, yo, man, your man is tripping. But that's the thing. That's the commissioner that powerful owners want. They want the law and order commissioner. They want the dude that's laying down the hammer on people. Problem is the hammer in most cases won't stand up in court. Tom Brady, hey man, I understand that football players, generally speaking, are rich, right? Not all of them, but, you know, most football players happen to be rich. And Tom Brady is of the superstar caliber of football players, so he's pretty rich. But Tom Brady, like, he in a world of different kind of rich. Like, his woman's got a different kind of rich money. Tom Brady did not exactly go 0 to 100 to get to where he is, if you understand what I'm saying, right? There was no starting from the bottom before he got there. I don't give a damn if he got drafted in the 6th round or not, all right? Like, that's Tom Brady. That ain't the kind of dude that just lets it slide when you try to bring the hammer to him. It's just not. That's just not the guy that you're going to get. So he's like, yeah, we can go to court. On top of this, I'm Tom Brady. Like, America will get on board with me. Why will America get on board with me? Because you out here giving out 4-game suspensions and 6-game suspensions for domestic violence, and you're going to suspend me 4 games behind some footballs, and you didn't find out about the footballs until a game that my team won handily? Oh, yeah, we can do this, dog. We can do this. And so they about to do this. Now, Roger Goodell, I don't think Roger Goodell is stupid. Like, I don't think Roger Goodell is a rocket scientist necessarily, but I don't think Roger Goodell is stupid. And I think that Roger Goodell knows that right now he is staring down a losing proposition. The Players Association knows that Roger Goodell is staring down a losing proposition because they offered a settlement to the NFL. They didn't hear anything back on the settlement, but they offered a settlement to the NFL. And what's that settlement talking about? A fine. A fine. They're like, we know there is not going to be a suspension. And I feel like Roger Goodell knows that too. I do. I feel like Roger Goodell knows that too. So Roger's got to be like, man, we got to find some kind of way that I can back out of this, right? And he'd love to find some way that he can back out of this. The problem is you can't do that. You can't undercut your own authority. Like, you can't make yourself look weak. Like, we can sit here and we can talk all day long about it. Take a real man to admit that he's wrong. Yeah, that's cool, but don't nobody really care about us. Like, that might work out in your family. You go up there, you kids, I have to go ahead and tell you guys, I made the wrong investments, and that's why we're enjoying these hearty ramen noodles for dinner again. Right? Like, maybe you get some props for that. I don't know. In this situation, Roger can't have no back down. And from people I've talked to, there's some powerful owners who are telling Roger, nah, man, ain't no backing down. We taking this all the way out. Because they've built Roger Goodell up. All the building up of Roger Goodell. Roger has been built up. And every time something like this comes up, every single time, it just whittles away at his credibility more and more and more and more and more. So how long are they going to keep this up? Like, I understand the league makes lots of money. Yes, Roger Goodell helps the league make a lot of money. But the guys behind this league put a lot of work into making Roger Goodell into somebody that we could respect. And he did it off the rip, and he did it on the back of punishment. The whole notion of Roger Goodell, the legend of Roger Goodell, the idea that Roger Goodell was a man that you had to respect was built on the back of player discipline off the rip. He was like a new dude in town who showed up in the bar and was like, yo, who's the craziest dude in town? And they pointed the dude out, and it was like, oh, Pac-Man Jones, you're suspended. That's what it was. That's how it went. But now we're here, and cats are fighting back. And it looks good for them. Look, man, that can't go on forever. And there he is right there, stuck. Because Roger Goodell, if nothing else, has to make it look like he's in charge. When in reality, man, he just works there. He like the office manager. Like that's how it comes across at this point. Roger Goodell is really just like the office manager up there. Because the power, man, a little bit more is going away because a little bit more credibility is going away. And no matter who you are, there's not enough money in the world to create a situation where your credibility just doesn't matter.
Bomani.
Check this out. Sean McCoy having a birthday party. I don't even know it's a birthday party, actually. It's just a party. Y'all trying to go? It's on Sunday, July 26th. Small problem. Most of the people listening to this would not be able to go. It is a private event at a private location, and according to the flyer, it says females only, 21 plus, a must. So just so you know, LaShawn McCoy is throwing a private party that he's telling everybody about. And and I'm quoting here, females only. So ladies, if you would like to go to that party, send an email to shadymccoyprivateevent@gmail.com. And then if you send that email, I can tell you how it's going to go already. You ready? You send the email and you get a reply that says, thank you for your RSVP to LaShawn McCoy's private extravaganza taking place on Sunday evening, July 26, 2015. Below are the following requirements to be confirmed for the event. Number 1, submit full name as seen on ID. 21 plus is a must. IDs will be checked for admission. Number 2, please submit one picture and provide social media information, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Number 3, upon entry, patrons will be asked for IDs and to sign a confidentiality agreement. Number 4, There are no plus ones. Everyone must be individually RSVP to event. And number 5, upon confirmation, you will receive pickup, drop-off location, and attire. Attire. Like, you don't even know what you are putting in on a lottery ticket to where the Shady McCoy's homeboys like the way your Instagram be hitting, and then maybe you can go party with them. Or perhaps part of why they're checking Facebook and Instagram is to see if you're the type to go to these parties and then post all the pictures because they don't necessarily want the pictures posted, right? So I guess to a degree that happens to make sense. I just have a few questions here, okay? Ladies, if you want to go to this party with LaShawn McCoy, like what exactly are you envisioning? Because I understand that women tend to get into these things in ways that are different than men do. Because I have all kinds of terms to describe a party that is nothing but a bunch of dudes. And I don't think I can say any of them on the radio, and I assure you that none of them are positive. There's never been a time that I've gotten to a party and been like, man, I'm so glad there's a bunch of dudes here. And you know why? Because they be fighting. They raising ruckus. Like, that's the big issue. I saw people talking about this party. They're like, oh, wow, a lot of alcohol and a lot of women. What could go wrong? Not nearly as much can go wrong as a bunch of dudes in there getting drunk. You mess around and play some 3-6 Mafia. Next thing you know, everybody out there fighting. Like, you don't need that. But also, just generally speaking, no. That's just generally not what's going on with me when I go to the party. So, if you're a woman and you see a flyer and it says ladies only, you have to understand that what this means is the only people who are going to be there are LaShawn McCoy and his homeboys. That's it. And let me tell you something about LaShawn McCoy's homeboys. The ones who are going to be at that get-together, ain't none of them in the NFL. And you know why I feel so confident saying that ain't none of them in the NFL? Because when dudes from the NFL are coming to a party being thrown by an NFL player, that NFL player will say on the flyer, come party with me and my NFL friends. Or come party with me and my celebrity friends, to leave it all vague. That's how that winds up going. So, I mean, you sitting at the house. You're like, all right, cool. I'm going to go to this party that's going to be nothing but a bunch of women. You're like, is your goal to meet Shady McCoy? Because I got news for you. It's going to be everybody's goal in there to meet Shady McCoy. And you know what pretty much everybody else is going to have to settle for? That's right, one of his homeboys. And I need you to note, the only thing we know about these homeboys is that they hang out with a dude named Shady. Like, that's the attainable prize there. Like, there's first prize in the raffle, certainly. But then under that, there's like, yo, we got like 5 of these T-shirts. We're just going to give these away, right? You get a T-shirt. Maybe. If you're lucky. Like, if you want to apply to go and, hey, look, if that's a party you want to go to, I'm not the one to tell you not to. I'm just amazed that this is the sort of thing that could come up, and there are people who are probably like, yeah, I can't wait to go kick it at Shady's private party. I'm trying to imagine, like, what's it going to be? Like, this dude is having a ladies-only event like he's Teddy Pendergrass. And just so you understand, as you may recall, when LaShawn McCoy had his press conference with the Bills, he looked like that guy. What guy? That guy. The guy in a suit jacket with a shirt that's all open up with the collar of the shirt going outside the jacket. Yeah. That guy. He's that dude. So you know how that dude gets down. That dude gonna have it where somebody, when the ladies show up to the party, they're gonna get through, they're gonna check that ID, and then that door is gonna swing open, and you know what's gonna be playing when that door swings open. That's right. They on that, yo, dog. Girls love the weekend. Oh yeah. Turn that weekend up. You're gonna hear that song all night long. He's going to be running that song in that party like all he's got is a CD single, and he's pressing the repeat button. That's what's going to be going on in there. I just want to know what conversations there are to be had to get into this party. Because let me tell you something I noticed about this party invitation that LaShawn McCoy put out. This is a very important detail that he gave here. It's number 4. There are no plus ones. Everyone must be individually RSVP to the event. By the way, this email that you get returned if you try to inquire about going to the party has the most random capitalization I've ever seen in my life. Anyway, that no plus ones is very, 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 very important, all right? Just because you and your homegirl want to go to the party doesn't mean that both you and your homegirl are going to be accepted to go into the party. So let me tell you what's going to be in there in the party. A whole lot of women who don't know anybody there. A whole lot of women standing around kind of by themselves to kind of talk to each other. Except why are they going to be there to talk to each other? That's not what they came for. So what you going to do? How you going to kill the time? Like, that just sounds like the most uncomfortable situation in the world. I'm going to be here in that dress I just bought to sit over here by myself and judge silently everything that's going on, except for the fact that I'm there. That's what you got. I can't lie. I want to go. Like, I don't need to participate in the party. I just need to see what this is going to look like. Now, you may have seen that the party flyer had been taken down off of Instagram. It seemed that nobody told LaShawn McCoy that you cannot use the Buffalo Bills logo to advertise your Teddy Pendergrass party. So the Bills had to be like, hey, bro, I need you. You don't have to. You out here messing with the money, Chief. What are you, crazy? So, yeah, one more time, ladies. Shady McCoy, private event at gmail.com. If you want to kick it with a dude named Shady and his homeboys, here is your chance. I can't tell you where the party's going to be. I can't tell you what you're supposed to wear. All I know is it says females only.
Bomani.
So, one thing that I like about working at ESPN Radio is that throughout the day you get to hear very interesting takes from your coworkers. Now, one thing that is very interesting, though, about working at ESPN Radio, I've come to find, is every now and then you turn on the radio and you hear your coworkers talk about something that you were talking about. It happened a couple months ago. Ryan Russillo and Danny Goodell, they were not very happy with me the day that I said that I wouldn't listen to anybody ever again who said about quarterbacks if they said they would take Blaine Gabbert over Cam Newton. And, you know, they were talking about it, so I had to get on the phone and give them a holler. Be like, yo, y'all want to talk? We can talk. Right? And so we got on the air, we talked about it, and went on about my business. It was a pretty good day. I had another day once where I found out on the radio that my man Colin Cowherd had some things to say about something I was talking about, something with Jameis Winston. And I didn't know what was going on, so I called up the show just to be like, hey, somebody let me know what's happening because I got his producer's number. And his producer was like, hey, Colin says he doesn't want to talk to you. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. And he's like, go talk on your own show. I say, okay. That's cool. I was just trying to figure out what he was talking about. Well, anyway, that's kind of the spirit of ESPN Radio, an exchange of ideas. It's a bit academic if you really want to think about it. Anyway, Colin today was talking about the notion that baseball is this highly complex thinking man's game, which I agree with him on is a bit of an overstated, overrated notion. But, well, here's what Colin had to say about the notion of baseball being the thinking man's game. And understand his point. He was talking to, you know, you'll see what he says about the manager of the Marlins. I used to be the general manager and all of that. And he's basically just like just about anybody could be a baseball manager. Now press play.
I mean, the Marlins put a general manager in their dugout. People freaked out. You know, like, whoa, it's baseball. You don't think a general manager can manage? Like it's impossible? The game is too complex. Like, I've never bought into that baseball's just too complex. Really? A third of the sport is from the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic has not been known in my lifetime as having, you know, world-class academic abilities. I mean, a lot of those kids come from rough backgrounds and have not had opportunities academically that other kids from other countries have.
Yikes. Here's the thing, man. It can't be that, right? It simply cannot be that. I think that's probably the simplest way that I could phrase this is that it cannot be that. But there's an offshoot of that discussion that I want to have, and it's something I've thought about for a while, and it's something that just kind of worries me generally in the ways that people kind of view the athletes that we wind up covering on programs like this, which is the idea that, like, coming from a rough background is necessarily an indicator of your intelligence. Now, your background is certainly going to have an effect on what level of education you have. Like, it totally will, all right? But let me say something to you as a fairly well-educated person. And when I say a fairly well-educated person, I got a couple of master's degrees in economics-related fields. I probably spent more time in my life in school than would be optimal. But I'm pretty well-educated. I cannot manage a baseball team. Like, you just can't throw me out there and expect me to be able to manage a baseball team. Like, it's just not that. The backgrounds that people have can never be a metric for the ability or the need for your ability to think within something. Like, it just can't be that. It never can. Like, the way I always make this point, and the example I always throw out about this, I throw it in two different directions. So, on one hand, I had a professor in graduate school, and we were doing this stuff that was called dynamic programming. Man, it was a whole lot of really, really, really annoying algebra to prove theories that, quite honestly, I was content to take their word for, right? Like, I didn't feel like if you just want to tell me this is cool. I'm sure there's a value of being able to prove it. That, by the way, is why I now work in sports radio, and I don't teach at anybody's college. But still, it would just be like, why am I doing this? And so people would always make the argument to me about how smart the dude was, and I would always say, it doesn't make you smart just because you can do something that I can't. I would say, are you going to make the argument that your mechanic is smarter than you just because he can do something that you can't? And those people would always say, okay, yeah, I see the thing. But the idea was that he was a professor, he was doing this thing in front of an economics class, so therefore he had to be so smart because he could do this thing that you could not do. You then go try to have a conversation with the dude, and then you'd find something you could do that he could not, which was taught to humans. Right? But that sort of thing kind of goes in the other direction. So, like, working on an automobile, for example, it's pretty complex. Like, it's not easy to do. And I am a highly educated person, a very educated person, and a lot of you guys listening to this right now are very educated people. I got nothing for you on the car. Like, you pull up the hood to that car, and, like, if you give me some jumper cables, I know what to do. I know where to put those, right? I can tell you where to look for stuff. Like, yeah. I think that right there is where you put the oil. Yeah, and that big old thing right there. Yeah. You'll see a picture of a thing on there. Yeah, twist it open. Yeah, you got that. There you go, right? Like, I think I learned how to identify car parts by the things that are broken down on mine. Or I pop the hood up, and I'm like, ooh, looks like something's wrong with that square. Right? I can't do that. Like, I'm incapable of doing that. Maybe if you gave me some time, perhaps I could learn it, but you couldn't just drop me off in a garage and then say less than 5% of mechanics have college degrees. That's not going to make me able to fix your car. Like, just the fundamental logic of that. I think you understand what I'm saying. Like, it can't be that. Like, we got to have some sort of recognition of the fact that the things that push people into and out of education very often are things that have nothing to do with intelligence. It can't be that. But another thing that we can't do as American people is start wagging our fingers at any other country talking about people are uneducated. Like, yo, the 20-some% of baseball that might be Dominican, you make whatever judgment about them that you want. There's no need to point that out, really. Like, this is a thing about baseball. And it doesn't necessarily mean that baseball players are stupid, but baseball is in a situation where there are very few reasons why, if you're a top-notch baseball player, for you to get a college degree. Like, it just doesn't work that way. You get drafted out of high school, obviously you're not going to be going to college. If you do go to college and you're worth a damn, chances are you're going to play 3 years, and then you're going to get out, and then you're going to go to minor leagues or whatever, right? Like, that's what it's going to be. That's how that's going to shake out. Like, the measurement of how few college degrees there are in baseball is really not the measurement of intelligence. Because if you got a college degree and you were a very good baseball player, maybe you aren't as smart as you think, because you probably should have run away and got that money beforehand. Like, that's a poor metric. But it's our uneducated baseball players right next to the uneducated Dominican baseball players. There's no way that the fact that Dominicans can play the game can be your indicator of how little intelligence that it takes. They can turn around very easily and be like, look at all these Americans playing this game, because it's kind of what and what in a lot of ways. It can't be that. And a big part of why it can't be that, and this is just the sort of thing that worries me, because I think Colin's larger point was that football is a more complex game. He's like, there's no NFL writer who could draw up a football play that Bill Belichick would use, because football is a more complex game. And, I mean, there's an argument to be made that football is a more complex game. Football is a more scripted game. Like, football requires a lot more preparatory strategy than baseball does. There's an intelligence required to understand what's going on in baseball and all the information that is relevant, and the game theory of baseball is very much intelligence-based. Football is a lot more about, can you draw something up? Like, that's kind of the nature of what it is. But here's the problem. Those football players ain't that much more educated than these baseball players that you talk about. They're not. So what we wind up having very often when people talk about athletes and their lack of education and how you don't have to be so smart to play this game, the argument always tends to basically go back to the idea that playing the game, not that hard. You don't have to be very smart. But coaching the game, leave that to the smart people. So, like, extend that talking about the NFL, for example, right? So there are a lot of guys in the NFL from rough backgrounds. There are a lot of guys in the NFL that are not very well educated. There are plenty of them. But there are a lot of them that know a hell of a lot about football. So basically what you're saying is, hey, you guys are here to be the pack mules. Leave the thinking to the thinking people. And who are the thinking people? Well, I guess they're not from the Dominican now, are they? It can't be that.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Bomani.
There's a story that we have been keeping up with on this program since it began, and I don't see any reason for us to stop doing that right now, and that is the story of Brittany Griner and Glory Johnson. And I understand that a lot of you are petrified to talk about a story like that because, you know, it's two women and they're married, right? That's a little bit much for a lot of you guys to process. I myself, long ago, figured out that this is life, and then we keep on going. A marriage is a marriage is a marriage. I'm not in one myself, right? So if other people want to do that, best of luck to you. Anyway, the luck didn't go so great for this particular couple, and you know, I didn't ask to know anything about them in the first place. Like, they went out of their way to tell us stuff. And then all of a sudden everything went haywire. And I have to admit, I am totally invested in the resolution of the dispute that they have. Like, I personally hate to see it when two people who are in love can't find a way to make it work. What can I say? I'm an optimist. But also, like, I'm a little bit messy, and this story had some twists and turns. So, you may recall that Brittany Griner and Glory Johnson got married. And we found out that they were pregnant. Well, Glory Johnson was pregnant. The they part apparently is up for dispute. But Glory Johnson was pregnant. Okay, she's pregnant. And then next thing you knew, Brittany Griner was trying to get an adult annulment. Like, she wanted out of this. And we all stood around and we were just like, wait, what? What just, I don't understand what happened. And we all just had a whole bunch of questions because we all had the thought or were under the impression that all the things that would be necessary for these two women to decide that they were going to have a baby and then to actually have one of them be pregnant, like there'd be a little bit too much to go through on that for you to just all of a sudden bail after the pregnancy actually happened. Like, that seemed impossible for a lot of us to grasp. So we were just trying to figure out, like, what exactly happened. Like, we don't really quite get this. And, well, apparently the court documents have come out. And this is from our wonderful friends at TMZ. And I got to tell you something. Everybody that talks about they hate the fact that TMZ is involved in sports, I love it personally. Like, I get really disappointed when there's something I really want out there to be found, and TMZ just is not able to find it. Like, I really, 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 really hate this. So here's the latest on this. So apparently Brittany Griner was upset because she found out that Glory Johnson had been sending text messages to an ex-boyfriend of hers, which, I mean, I don't know if you've ever had somebody send a text message to the ex-boyfriend. I've been in that situation, and it doesn't necessarily feel so great. And that's how Brittany Griner is saying that she felt like she wanted to get out because of that. Okay, here's what I didn't realize until today about this story. Did you realize that Glory Johnson is seeking spousal support from Brittany Griner in the amount of $20,000 a month? $20,000 a month. When you get a chance, go look up what they pay for you to play in the WNBA. Let me give you a hint. It isn't $20,000 a month. You do realize that we have the possibility of something that we have never seen before. And you know what that possibility is. We've talked about it on this show before, but maybe you're new. We have never had a situation in sports before where competitors used to be married and now they're not, and now one of them is paying the other $20,000 a month. So let's just say that you are playing basketball and Brittany Griner is in the lane and you have filed paperwork requesting that Brittany Griner pay you $20,000 a month. How comfortable are you going to the rim under those circumstances? Like, let's just think about that for a second. Like, think about all the dudes who played in the NBA that owed Charles Oakley money. And Charles Oakley used to just, like, I was reading up on Charles Oakley stories today. Charles Oakley had some dispute with Jeff McGinnis over a woman in the year 2000. And during the shoot-around, Jeff McGinnis is sitting on the bench, and Charles Oakley just ran up and punched him and then walked away. And you know why I wound up reading that story? Because I was looking for another story of Charles Oakley punching somebody in the face. And it was actually slapping somebody in the face. And I was talking about Tyrone Hill, where apparently he owed Tyrone Hill owed Charles Oakley $54,000 from a card game, and Tyrone Hill had not paid Charles Oakley. So Charles Oakley slapped him in the face, and then Tyrone Hill tried to pay Charles Oakley, and Charles Oakley came up with some bizarre axiom of life, which was that in life things are double. So now it wasn't about $54,000. It was about $108,000, okay? That's how Charles Oakley gets down, okay? $54,000. You got Charles Oakley's $54,000. Charles Oakley slaps you in the face. That's how it works. What do you think Charles Oakley would do about $20,000 a month? Like, imagine somebody playing basketball against Charles Oakley, and you have gotten Charles Oakley for $20,000 a month. over something that took place over a span of 28 days. Are you trying to go to the rim? Because I don't know about you, but I'm shooting threes today. Not only am I shooting threes, y'all better call out those screens. You ever play basketball against somebody who actively wished to do bodily harm to you? I have. I was playing in the gym at the University of North Carolina. This is like 2003, 2004. I was talking a little noise, no big deal. And I wound up talking some noise to this dude from Boston, and apparently he just really didn't enjoy noise talk in any way. So at first he tried to guard me, and he kept trying to keep his hands on me, guard me. And so I just kept, I made some moves. I kept, I was just shaking him off or whatever. Then at one point he changed his strategy. And he then decided to go guard somebody else. Right. And I was like, I don't understand what this is. So they did the whole full-on switch, and they switched it on both ends. And so then when his team had the ball, what he would try to do was come set the dirty screen on me. And that was just for talking noise. Like, I wasn't being disrespectful to him, his mother, his heritage, or anything like that. But he decided he was going to do bodily harm to me using screens. So, like, if Gloria Johnson come back out here for the next WNBA season and she getting Brittany Griner for $20,000 a month, people need to call out these screens. Like, I don't know exactly how good of a basketball player Gloria Johnson is, but if y'all love her, y'all need to call out those screens. We've never had anything like this before. I'll watch the WNBA for that. Oh, yeah. I've watched a lot less entertaining things than women basketball for the prospect of seeing some people fight. Hey, I watched the Falcons and the 49ers hoping that Deion Sanders and Andre Rison might fight. Right. Think about that. All that hair grease in that matchup, right? I'll definitely, Brittany Griner, one of the greatest athletes in the world. I'll definitely watch the WNBA to see the first time they play against each other. They'll be making history.
Bomani.
Man, it's been one hell of a day for Ohio State, hasn't it? If you guys have not heard the most recent news, Sports Illustrated has it from Braxton Miller himself that he is changing positions. He will be playing H-back for Ohio State because apparently he would rather play H-back than way back. Hey, look, Ohio State, if I'm Urban Meyer, if I'm him, my starter's Barrett. Barrett was the guy that was first team All Big Ten last year. Appreciate what you did, Cardell Jones, but Barrett would be my starter. He seems to be the most talented one that I know has an operable shoulder. That would have been it the whole way. I applaud Braxton Miller for trying to do it, right? He wanted to play quarterback. He tried to do it. And the moment I will always remember when it comes to Braxton Miller, it's not from when he got really good, right? Look, I am not sentimental about this college football thing. I hate what the system of it is, all of that stuff. I'm not into touchy-feely type stuff with it. Those aren't the stories that attract me. But Braxton Miller threw that Hail Mary to beat Wisconsin in 2011. Thing throws from about the 50-yard line. And I'll never forget, they did the post-game interview with him. And remember, this was after Jim Tressel had gotten fired. That team, I think, wound up going something like 6-6 that year, something like that. They can't go to a bowl game. They've got an interim head coach. Like, all of that's going on at Ohio State at that time. And he's doing the post-game interview. He's a freshman. He'd been struggling in the first half of that year. That was really, I feel like, the moment where it was like, okay, this is Braxton Miller's team. They're in good hands. And he's doing the interview, and he just stops and he starts crying. And I remember sitting there watching it, and I was like, damn, this even got me. Like, this has even gotten me, and I'm not the type for it, you know? So, for him to try to be the starting quarterback at Ohio State, like, it was very clear, like, the way he was emotionally caught up in that touchdown in 2011. Like, that's a dude from Ohio playing for Ohio State. Like, this is something to him. This means something to him. So I applaud him for giving it the go that he could give it to try to make it work, but it just wasn't going to happen. And it probably wasn't a good thing for it to happen for Ohio State. I would like to stop and take this moment, by the way, to say that J.T. Barrett is from Wichita Falls, Texas, which reminds me that Ohio State has 3 quarterbacks. Well, 2 quarterbacks now. Texas, still sitting on 0. Anyway, Braxton Miller is going to move to H-back. He's an incredible athlete. Like, playing wide receiver or those types of positions is a little harder than it looks. Like, I think every time there's some sort of athletic quarterback, we can talk about Terrell Pryor, Tim Tebow, whatever it is. Once you decide that they can't play quarterback, everybody's like, well, just put them at receiver. The dudes who actually can play receiver in college have a hard time playing receiver in the NFL. Like, it's not that easy just to go play another position. It isn't like just take the high school quarterback and make him do a college receiver. It's just not that simple. So a lot remains to be seen as to whether or not Braxton Miller can make this transition. But it is not going to be because he's not talented. He is talented. If he can gain the weight and figure the rest of it out, there we go. I tell you this, my guess is he's going to be one of them pass-catching H-back types. I find those guys who didn't come up playing hitting football. And what I mean by hitting football, I mean Braxton Miller's been a quarterback here for a stretch. Think about Jimmy Graham, for example, who played basketball all that time, and then he came back to play football. There was never a chance that Jimmy Graham was going to be an inline blocker. He's been a little bit too far removed from that world. But there you go. And somehow, that isn't the most interesting quarterback news related to Ohio State. Maybe not necessarily interesting is the right word. How about just outright funny? So Cardale Jones. Cardale Jones became famous on Twitter with people because of a tweet that said he didn't come to play school, he came to play football. And I remember after, he became somebody and that whole thing came out and he won the championship, he talked about how stupid that was and everything else. And I'll be honest, I didn't have a problem with him saying that he didn't come to play school, he came to play football, because they didn't recruit him to play school, they recruited him to play football. And I'm sure everybody paid all the lip service to it, but, that's the way the schools primarily view these athletes, is as athletes. The student part is just a game that you have to play in order to sell this, but I didn't have a problem with it because, that's really kind of what the game is. But where I think my mistake, it wasn't my mistake in looking at it that way, because I don't think there was anything wrong with looking at it like that necessarily. But the thing I didn't give credit for, and I think that gets lost very often in these situations, is these dudes are on these campuses, like Cardale Jones went to prep school, and now he's been on campus at Ohio State, for 3 years? This is his 4th year. And, you get out, you become more aware of things, you become more exposed to things. And Cardale Jones today was tweeting about on the hashtag Black Lives Matter. I understand that hashtag infuriates a lot of you, and I don't give a damn. He was tweeting on that hashtag, and he made a point that's just like, look, you say that all lives matter, but when I see these things come up in the news, they're only happening, it seems, to black people. Like, you can pull a story here and there about a white person, but the overwhelming majority of these type stories with these issues with the police are about black people. So he says, if you say all lives matter, I need to know what you mean by all. Because he's saying, I'm seeing this other stuff, and it doesn't seem like you're that concerned. So if all lives matter, what do you mean by all? So some dude came back at Cardale Jones, some Buckeyes fan, and the Buckeyes fan told him, worry about getting us fans another championship. Stay out of this bull, with the hashtag Go Bucks. And Cardale Jones replied, and I quote, sorry, Mr. Master, I ain't allowed to tweet nothing but football stuff. I don't want you to think I'm more than a football player, sir. And it, just like that, how did Cardale Jones become my favorite college football player in the nation just that quickly? I can't be the only person here that feels that way. Cardale Jones hit that dude with the hammer. That dude had to come back and apologize. I say this as somebody who deals with internet trolls every day. They never come back and apologize. This dude's just like, I meant no disrespect. Hashtag activism hasn't saved any lives. Just makes people feel better. And his background picture on his Twitter account, by the way, was a whole bunch of guns. Not Cardale's, the other dudes. Anyway, yeah. Here's why I brought this up, and here's why I find it interesting. Because I think that it became a bit of a story because it's slow news time and people like Twitter burns, right? The reason I find this to be a story is we talked earlier about Cardale Jones and that tweet about I came here to play football. I didn't come here to play school, or however it went. And everybody came down on him, and they battered him for it, and they hammered him for that, and da-da-da. But what's that fan saying right there? just shut up and play football. It's the grand irony. There's a whole lot of people out there who hammer Cardale Jones for saying that he didn't come there to play school. Then he does something with his mind, and they wish he'd just shut up and play football. You just can't win sometimes, you know? You really can't. You can't win when people are just looking for a reason to come down on you. I tell you this, though. I bet our good buddy Dan Gustafson, I bet he ain't going to make this mistake again.
Bomani.
Yeah, I hadn't planned to talk about this, but this just came up. And, yeah. So, I need somebody to help me out with this. All right? You let me know if I'm tripping. So, I saw a little bit of the trailer where this kid comes up to Rocky, and he's talking to Rocky, and he's saying something to him about Apollo Creed and what he knows about Apollo Creed. Rocky like, what you know about Apollo Creed? He's like, he's my dad. And so then it goes on, and Rocky is going to become Apollo Creed's son's trainer. Do I have that right? Right? That's what it's going to be. Rocky is going to train Apollo Creed's son. Rocky going to be in Apollo Creed's son's corner. Don't you remember what happened the last time Rocky was in a Creed man's corner? How do you not have beef? Like, how can we get how does this movie even start? I don't understand that at all. Like, how does this movie even begin? Like, the only way for this movie to really go is the way that Rocky 5, that was the one with Tommy Morrison in it, right? Rocky 5? That's the only way that this can possibly go. Like, yeah, Rocky, you can help me, and then I'm going to turn on you, and then we going to fight in the street. Like, I don't know if you know, Rocky, but I'm aware of the fact that you are responsible for my dad being dead. I feel like we let Rocky skate on that. But people love Rocky. Rocky's everybody's American hero. Okay, we love that. We respect that. But, like, somehow Rocky is responsible for a good man's death, and they convince us to root for Rocky. Because it was the Russians' fault. So Rocky is going to go avenge Apollo's death. Guess who's still dead? Yeah, that's right. This music gets you all excited, right? Get the blood flowing, get you pumped up. That's right. You know what it does for Apollo Creed? Not a damn thing, because he's dead. Nothing. Turn it up, see if Apollo can hear it. Come on, Apollo. Apollo, get up and do that shadow box. Come on, Apollo. We're going to go run it on the beach, Apollo. Apollo, why aren't you getting up to go running on the beach? Oh, that's right. I forgot, Apollo. You're dead. Sorry about that. That was my bad. I had that towel over there, but, I thought you might need it. I thought you'd be sweaty after you got out the ring. Maybe I could use it to dry up some of that blood. Hey, we just keep doing this for Rocky. No. Unless you promise me that this movie about Apollo Creed's son is going to end with Apollo Creed's son walking up to Rocky and kicking him into family jewels, I don't want to see it. But Southpaw, who is sponsoring this segment, now that's a movie you ought to go see. Now that sounds great. That sounds like a very, very good movie. I want you to go see that one. There you go. From what I can tell in the credits, in the previews rather, Jay Gyllenhaal is not responsible for his homeboy dying. Got another question for you, Rocky. Know you're getting all hype. I know you're getting all ready and everything. And look, I've been in this situation before. It's a real tricky sort of thing, man, when your friends die and maintaining contact with the families and everything else. You lose track. I totally understand that. I really do. But, hey, Rocky, so what'd you do? You went over there to Russia and you beat the Russian. You did it for the American way. You supposedly, avenging Apollo's death. How you lose so much touch with the family, bruh? It sounds to me like the only reason you went to fight the Russian was because you were fighting your own guilt. That's not what a hero does, Rocky. That's not what a hero does. A hero's about a world that's much bigger than himself. But that's not what you're about, Rocky, is it? Nah, you just want to go into the meat locker, beat all the meat in the locker. And you let your homeboys die on your watch. It's whatever. Let me tell you something else about Rocky, too, while I'm on this. Yes, last night I did it 2 nights ago, I did it to Hoosiers. Tonight, I'm doing it to Rocky. Rocky lost a lot of fights. Like, not just the fights that Rocky lost before he became Rocky. Rocky out here losing in these movies. Didn't Rocky lose the Clubber Lang? Rocky is quite possibly the dumbest character in the history of movies. Because Rocky was taking whoopings in the ring where if you survive, you don't go do that anymore. Like, can you imagine if real boxing was like a Rocky movie? Like, how quickly would they outlaw boxing if real boxing was like a Rocky movie? Like, part of why I think when people watch Floyd Mayweather and they wind up getting so bored, because you grew up watching Rocky. Rocky, the only boxer that you ever watched. Though everybody would be dead in a Rocky movie in 5 minutes. Everybody would be dead in a Rocky movie. Like, it was like, if Rocky, that leads to my next point about the young Apollo Creed. If I'm you, this is just if I'm you, right? Like, I can't tell anybody how to live their fictional lives. But if I'm that dude, me, myself, personally, I want somebody in my corner that, like, I can be sure that when he hears the bell ring, he knows that it's the bell ringing and doesn't think that it's the bell ringing that's always ringing. Yeah. I saw Rocky 5. Rocky had fallen on some hard times. Sound like he got some of that CTE. I don't know if that's the guy I need watching my back. I mean, look, when Rocky was on top of his game, my daddy died on his watch. So now I'm going to let old Rocky protect me? Never mind the fact, by the way, they found a way to make a Rocky movie that's not about Rocky, but it's going to wind up turning into a Rocky movie. It's still going to be about Rocky. How is Rocky still alive? Anybody? How is Rocky still alive? Oh, man, that's when Rocky was fighting old boy in the street. That was hilarious. Like Tommy Gunn, it wasn't a starter jacket that he was wearing, but he was wearing a jacket absolutely from the starter jacket era, and he's in the street fighting Rocky in the middle of the street. And everybody just stayed and watched as he fought Rocky in the street. Let me tell you something about real life. Granted, I'm talking about a Rocky movie, but still. Let me tell you something about real life. If you tried to fight Rocky Balboa in the street, if you think that everybody's just going to sit around and watch you beat up Rocky Balboa, you are out of your mind. Like, imagine that. Think about that. If you were sitting around somewhere and somebody started beating up on Rocky, you and all of your friends would go put them hands and feet on him for that. Every single one of y'all. Somehow, Tommy Gunn got to shoot the fair one with Rocky and was up and somehow managed to lose.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt. Frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.
Bomani.
All guests join us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, including our next guest. He covers Major League Baseball for us here at ESPN. His name is Pedro Gomez. Pedro, what's going on?
Bomani, very, very good, man. Great to talk to you.
Hey, man, so glad to have you on here. And I wanted to talk to you about Randy Johnson as he is going into the Hall of Fame this weekend. You covered him when he played with the Arizona Diamondbacks. But before we even get to that, you and I were just talking about this a second ago, that it's crazy to think that once upon a time, Randy Johnson got traded for Mark Langston, and the Expos were buyers to make a playoff push.
Yeah, exactly. The Expos were buyers, and they were buying a veteran pitcher with a pretty good track record in Mark Langston. And Randy Johnson was basically the wild horse who couldn't be tamed because he just led the league in walks every single year. Yeah, he threw, 450 miles an hour, but nobody knew where the ball was going. And he was the untamed buck. And, he got to Seattle. He got under Lou Piniella's tutelage and really just started blossoming once he got to Seattle.
Well, it really is incredible to think that when the trade was made, they would have been very happy if he just turned out to be Mark Langston. Like, Mark Langston once had 270 strikeouts in a season. That was a left-handed pitcher. That was a pretty noble goal. And then he turned into Randy Johnson.
Yeah, a guy who, struck out well over 300 a year once he got his control, once he knew how to throw strikes. And, you think back that he was the guy that was thrown into the deal because, like I said, he was kind of a prospect at that point. He had already been up at the big league level, but he was not anybody that people thought could be harnessed. And lo and behold, look what he turned into.
All right, we're talking to Pedro Gomez of ESPN, and you covered him when he played for the Arizona Diamondbacks, and he and Kurt Schilling, of course, were just kind of an unfair pair when the two of them got together. But at that stretch in Randy Johnson's career, how truly unhittable was he?
It was incredible because there were guys that the best hitters in the game were absolutely – they had no chance. They had no chance against him, and it might be because they thought too much. But, Bomani, here's the weird thing. I covered the Oakland A's before the Diamondbacks, and this is going to be a name that you've really got to be a baseball guy to understand or remember who he was. There was a guy named Lance Blankenship who played for the Oakland A's, and he was not, an incredible player by any means. He was a backup second baseman most of his career, but he's the exact type of guy who, hey, Randy Johnson's pitching against the A's today, and Tony Phillips or Mike Gallego, the regular second baseman, all of a sudden had, this little shoulder impingement or knee. Hey, I really can't play today. And so here came Lance Blankenship. Hey, I'll play. I'm ready. And of course, it was the fictitious impingement because Randy was on the hill. And Lance Blankenship, for whatever reason, could hit Randy Johnson. And it's almost one of those things where if you were too good of a hitter or if you thought too much, you weren't going to be able to touch him because you were already an out before you got in the batter's box. But if you got in there and thought, I don't even know anything about Randy Johnson, then all of a sudden you could hit the guy. And I want to say Blankenship broke up at least 2 no-hitters that Randy had deep in games, either in the 8th or 9th innings. And we would always just sit in the press box shaking our heads because Lance Blankenship, of all people, broke up no-hitters off Randy Johnson 2 or 3 times in his career, I want to say, and they were fairly deep. And it was just amazing because Randy Johnson was the epitome of a guy who, if you got 2 or 3 hits off of him for 9 innings as a team, you thought, okay, we did pretty well today.
All right, we're talking to Pedro Gomez, and I'm trying to think, especially with those moments with the Diamondbacks, was there anything better when we start talking about Randy Johnson than him coming out of the bullpen at the end in Game 7 of the World Series? Like, yeah, I just pitched last game, but we won in a blowout. I'm here. I'm back again. Like, you get to deal with me one more time.
And Bomani, I covered that World Series for the Arizona Republic, and I can tell you, even more electrifying and intimidating than him coming out of the bullpen that night was him going to the bullpen in the 7th or 8th inning of that game. There's a way for relievers to get to the bullpen at Chase Field, which back then was Bank One Ballpark, through the bowels, through the tunnels on the backside, like a lot of the newer stadiums have. You can get to the bullpen, and all of a sudden you just start warming up, but you can get there kind of, behind the scenes. The Diamondbacks made it a point, and Randy Johnson bought into it, that he would go to the bullpen between innings, but on the field, like down the third base line when the teams are warming up between innings. And it was all about intimidation. Let the Yankees watch from their dugout as Randy Johnson jogged to that left field bullpen from the third base dugout, and the entire stadium lit up, stood up. It was electrifying just to watch him. And, of course, a lot of people were like, well, he's just going out there for show. He just pitched the night before on Saturday. There's no way he can come back on a Sunday after throwing 100 pitches the night before and be able to pitch again. And sure enough, all of a sudden, he started warming up a little bit, just tossing in the bullpen. And then he got into the real rhythm. And you could just see the Yankees all of a sudden say, and these were the Yankees, as you remember, Bomani. This is the great Yankee team. And him walking out to the bullpen between innings, him really starting to heat up, you could sense that the tide was, if the Yankees kind of sensed, if we don't get about 3 runs right now, we don't have a chance. And sure enough, that's what happened.
All right, we're talking to Pedro Gomez. Another interesting facet of Randy Johnson's career, of course, is when Arizona got him, I think the expectation was, okay, you get a few more good years out of him, but he is getting old. And then he just kept being good and incredible and threw a perfect game against my Braves and everything else. But it never seemed like it was going to end.
Bomani, they signed him to a 5-year deal for $51 million, which, of course, now people would shake their heads and say, that's all. But in 1999, when you signed somebody to 5 years, 51, that was an enormous contract. And all of a sudden, his first 4 years with the Diamondbacks, Cy Young. And it has to be, honestly, in the history of free agent contracts, that one, probably Greg Maddux going to the Braves from the Cubs. I mean, there's only a few of those free agent contracts, the big money ones, that you could say these are the best ones in the history of the game. Randy Johnson absolutely would qualify as one of those.
Well, especially like once it got to the point where it is almost a Nolan Ryan sort of thing, where it's just like, okay, so really the fastball, it's still really fast. He's 40 years old. This thing is still really fast.
The fastball mixed in with that just wicked slider, and you could just see hitters were bailing. I mean, if you were a left-handed batter swinging against Randy Johnson, your right leg, when you picked it up and kind of approached the ball as though you were going to swing, half of those were stepping outside of the batter's box, almost into the first base dugout, because the ball was coming from such an angle. You know, those long limbs, the 6'10" wingspan, 7-foot wingspan, whatever he has, and the ball looks like it's going to hit you right in the rib cage every time, and then all of a sudden, whoosh, just right across the plate. It truly was a thing of beauty to watch.
All right, talking to Pedro Gomez of ESPN. Now, one thing about Randy Johnson, though, he was a bit of an ornery son gun, wasn't he?
Incredibly ornery. I got to cover him for several years, but even if you talk to the people who covered him in Seattle, he was a guy that, Bomani, the way I always viewed him is, okay, the day a pitcher pitches, obviously you don't talk to him because that's his day, he's pitching before a game. But I used to be in the clubhouse watching him, and it literally was like watching a caged lion right before he was going to be unleashed into the Colosseum in Rome, during the Roman Empire days. And that's what he was like. He was pacing. He was nervous. He was just, his teammates couldn't even say, hey, what's up? Because he would bite their heads off and fill them up with expletives like, how dare you even look at me on the day I'm pitching? And he was like that the day he pitched, the day before he pitched, and even 2 days before he pitched. He was just a very cantankerous, moody, really difficult guy to talk to. There were times that you could talk to him, and especially if he knew you a little bit. He and I ended up having a pretty good relationship, but it was just venom at times that came out of him because that's the way he wound himself up for his starts.
And somehow he made himself believe that signing with the Yankees was going to work out well for him. Hey, man, we can't win them all. Pedro Gomez, ESPN, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I really appreciate it.
Bomani, my absolute pleasure, man.
Bomani.
It's that time of year where we just have to find stuff to talk about to get us through until the NFL starts. We holding on just like you holding on, baby. It ain't no problem. to help fill the void, we're at that point now where all the college football coaches start doing all their media rounds, right? Got to get out there and talk to us before they get into camp and everything else. So for Highly Questionable, we interviewed a bunch of coaches. By the way, no coach, no person ever, right? All the rappers and all the people that we've interviewed, very often people are excited to talk to Poppy. I do a television show called Highly Questionable with Dan Le Batard and his father Gonzalo. We call him Poppy, and people really love him. And people get really excited about meeting him. No one has ever been more excited about meeting him than Art Briles. Art Briles. Art Briles was so thrilled to meet Poppy. Art Briles, how about this? Give me another story about Art Briles. He told us this. I don't think he had any problem with me sharing this. Art Briles said that when he was at the University of Houston, he was hanging out in the dorm with the dudes, and this new Isley Brothers record, it just came out, and it was called For the Love of You, and he heard it, and he wrote it down, and he gave it to his wife, and that is now their song. He says on their playlist, song number 1 is For the Love of You, because Art Briles is about that Isley Brothers life. You did not see that coming, did you? That's what you get for judging. Anyway, the coaches are going around, and so Steve Spurrier's made the rounds. We talked to Spurrier on HQ a couple of days ago, and we ran the interview already, and it was hilarious because we asked, Dan asked him the best that football's made him feel, and he's like, well, we just won the bowl game against Miami, and he was feeling real good about that. And I was thinking that he was needling Dan about the Miami thing, which I think was part of it. But another part of it was apparently everywhere Spurrier's gone, he's talked about the fact that they've never had a losing season there, and that's what he's focusing on. And, they just went 11-2, in back-to-back years before this? Well, here's the tricky thing about college football. When you're a coach, you get old fast. And it's not about how old you actually get. It's about how old your competition in recruiting can convince people you are, because you can then make them think the coach they're signing with will not be there for 4 years, right? Like, that's what this comes down to, and it happens to a bunch of guys. It happens all the time, but you don't know how long that guy's going to be there. You don't know how long that guy's going to be there. That's why you wind up with situations like Florida State had with Bobby Bowden and Jimbo Fisher, where they had to get Jimbo in place because they didn't know when Bobby was going to leave. But how do you keep getting players if nobody knows when the coach is going to leave? Well, Spurrier got to that place. Spurrier had said something not too long ago about how he only planned to coach 2 or 3 years. And, there have been some questions about recruiting at South Carolina, and recruiting at South Carolina is very, very, very difficult. The population just isn't that high, like the number of great players that you're getting that the state of South Carolina produces. It produces some. It produced Clowney, it produced Lattimore, but it's only but so many, right? So, yeah, you'll get the A.J. Green here and there, but to compete in the SEC, it's hard to get the talent that you need at South Carolina. Like, if Spurrier were to win the SEC at South Carolina, it would be every bit as impressive as winning a national championship at Florida. Every single bit. And look, they got to the SEC championship game once under Spurrier, and I believe the final score was 56-17, and it was not the Gamecocks on top. Anyway, yesterday, Spurrier did like an impromptu press conference out of nowhere. Apparently, he's really concerned with people thinking he's old. The problem is when people try to convince you that they're not old, they tend to say things that make them sound old. Roll it.
As most of you know, I'm a big believer in Attila the Hun's book. He said it very simply. It's a simple truth that the greater your accomplishments, your victories, the greater opposition, torment, and discouragement your enemies will throw in your path. Expect it and don't become a victim of it. Expect it. So I'm telling our fans, expect those people that are our enemies to talk bad about us. We finally won enough games, although it wasn't all that much last year. But we finally won enough that they're trying to convince us that my age has something to do with it. And I can't coach anymore. Jeff Guy, our team doctor, told me that physically and mentally I'm about like a 55-year-old guy. I still call the plays, I still run the show, and I plan on coaching a long time.
The second that you convince people of how young you feel by saying that you're like a 55-year-old guy, you're an old guy. Like, he wasn't like, I feel like I did when I was 35. No, nothing makes you sound older than talking about how young you feel. I think that's something that we could all agree on. Nothing makes you sound older than talking about how young you feel. Spurrier was talking about his enemies over and over again. I'm like, what did he do? Listen to Tupac before he showed up in there? Like, it was bizarre just hearing him go all over the place. And it's tricky. How do you convince people that you're not old? How do you do it? I mean, he doesn't look old. Steve Spurrier's 70 years old. To put that in perspective, Bear Bryant didn't make it to 70. Spurrier is 70 years old. I never would have guessed that until somebody told me. And I didn't find out till I found out that he was getting old, because that's what they're saying on the recruiting trail. And I just don't know how frustrating that must be, because the only way that he could possibly refute that, is he's just got to win a lot of games. Now, the SEC East is not great, so, like, that helps, right? You got a chance to win some games over there. Okay, cool. But, yeah, it normally doesn't end so well when you get to the point that you have to convince people that you're not old. And look, I want Steve Spurrier to coach forever. I love all these things about Steve Spurrier. He can be very sensitive. He can be a bit thin-skinned, everything else. But, like, the way he talks about the fact they weren't that good last year. I love the fact that he's not rationalizing it to you. He's just like, yeah, we didn't win any, didn't win as many games last year as we like and everything else. I love how he played to South Carolina fans and saying, we finally got there. We finally got good enough that our enemies want to take us down. Like, South Carolina, let me make sure I look this up. I want to get this exactly right because I've gotten it wrong on the radio before. But it is a somewhat fascinating statistic about South Carolina football. Before Steve Spurrier got to South Carolina, do you know how many times South Carolina won 10 games? Like, before those those 3 11-win seasons they had, do you know how many times South Carolina won 10 games? Once since World War II. Once. So what's he saying? Yeah, we've been, people talk bad about us forever. Now we have haters. That's what he said in Steve Spurrier speak. Now we have haters. Because that's what an old man does. Talk about having haters and how young he feels. Best of luck to you, dog, but you never go convince people you're not old. You'll be trying to convince people of that until you're not old. Because the alternative would be that you are...
The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Weeknights from 9 to 11 Eastern or on demand at ESPNradio.com.